Alright. So, let's see. We were only streaming about 20 minutes ago. I got done with my call a little bit sooner than I thought. So now we get a chance to draw the rest of the body. Now we get to talk about hip bone. No, we talked about hip bones. So after talking about hip bones, you were talking about upper body. So let's talk about how the arms are connected to the body. Right? We're going to simplify this concept of the collarbone into such a simple way that you guys are going to just be like, what? So let's think about what the collarbone is. So let's talk about the actual upper body in general. Let's segment this out. All that stuff. This is other. So if we're going to be talking about the upper body, what are we talking about? We are talking about the rib cage. We're going to be talking about how to find little elements that are going to help us map out the rest of the body. And in this case, we're going to focus a lot on the collarbone. The collarbone in itself is quite important because it connects your muscles like your shoulders, your pectorals, and your neck to your actual body system. So understanding all these things that connect to this little structure that goes around your rib cage, it is your rib cage, is going to be very, very, very important. And we're going to focus mostly on how the arms connect to this element. Here, let me close the window. Oh, there's this guy that goes around with like a speakerphone or something, like just selling like, we sell metal, we buy cars, we do this. And so if you think about it like this, right? Think about your rib cage is going to be like Spider-Man as a stick figure holding up the train in Spider-Man, like whatever. Like what was that Spider-Man one? Or he like with Doc Ock. I think it's Spider-Man 2. So he's going to be like that. It's just a little stick figure that's holding back your rib cage. Right? So if you draw like that, that is all you really need to know where your neck comes out from. Like he comes out of your head. The little arms are going to tell you where your shoulders connect. And then the little legs are going to tell you how wide your abs are going to be. So if you think about it like that, it becomes a little bit easier. Right? So if you think about a rib cage and you just think about a dude hanging on the front of your rib cage, that is essentially all you really need to know to draw the body, the upper body at least. It's really silly to think about it like that, but it helps. So now let's see, how do we approach that when it comes down to like drawing like an actual character? Let's draw some like torsos and see how that works out. So we're going to have the midline for our rib cage. The rib cage can be any shape you want, right? And that doesn't have to be necessarily that. You're going to find, well, the first thing you're going to find, it's easier to find the legs first. So let's find the little divot that happens for our rib cage. Okay. Then from there, we are going to go up and we're going to draw the body of our little stick man. Then we're going to draw the head of the stick man. Or you can draw the arms going to the side. Yay. Remember, this goes around your shape. So if you draw an object around your shape, you're going to have the ability to draw around your shape. Right? These little curvatures that you get going around are very important because your body is not a flat surface, right? It's not a box. It's not this, right? It has roundness to it, so you have to make sure that when you're drawing things, you draw things going around your object. Your stickman's head is right there. Stickman. That actually works really well. Like, what the hell? The stickman approach actually works. Like, that actually looks decent. It looks like a dude puffing out his chest. But it actually like works absolutely fantastic for the whole concept of the upper body. That's fantastic. That's yet another approach that we can coin, I guess. Yeah, that's wonderful. All right. So, well, that's one way you can think about it. That's another way you can think about it. The stickman approach, apparently, is like a fantastic way to draw the upper body. Who would have known? Huh. Anyways, that is not the approach that I was thinking about teaching you guys. That just literally popped into my head the moment that I saw this. The way that I normally like to do it is with a cylinder. So I like to draw my hip bones like cylinders. Well, I also like to draw my collarbone like cylinders because it connects both sides of the arm. So now, whenever I draw my bodies, I draw them like little beanbags. I determine the middle part for my rib cage first. And then I give my hip bones their width. And then I normally draw where the arms are going to go. And I draw a tube going across my body. And that gives me the upper part of my collarbone. Then it segments this little tiny section to where my neck and my back muscles need to be. So there has to be 3 elements here. There has to be 1, 2, 3 elements within this area at the top of the rib cage. So regardless of how you segment this top part of the rib cage, you have to have 3 parts to it. You have to have a cylindrical object that is your neck, and you have to have 2 objects around it that connect to your collarbone. Those are your muscles that connect to the back. So you need to have those because if you take any of those out, it's going to look weird. If you draw a character that doesn't have any of that and just has like a big fat neck, that's going to look weird. Right? Going into your shoulders. So that might be something that you're drawing. Another thing that's going to look off is when you don't have any back muscles and you end up with your neck going like that into your shoulders. That looks weird as well. It might look a little bit more right because you can correct it a little bit by straightening it out a little bit. But that's just going to look off if you don't add these little muscles on the side. Adding the muscles on the side just makes it look right. So thinking about those 3 elements when you're drawing the top part of the head is very important when it comes down to drawing the upper body. When you're drawing from the side, you have your rib cage, you have your collarbone, and then remember, you're going to have 3 elements in here, regardless of, let's say you have like your face right here. You have to have 3 elements in here. You have to have space for the side of your back muscles. You got to have space for your cylindrical neck, and then space for the other side of your back muscles. If you don't leave those three separations or the three little elements, it's just not going to look proper. It's not going to look like a neck. Learning where they connect to your body is a matter of just observing. So it normally connects from the bottom of the neck, from the bottom of the ear. That's where your neck starts coming out from, right? So if you identify both sides of your ear, you can determine how wide you want your neck. Now, remember, this is the cylindrical part of it. So I still need back muscles to connect to my shoulders. And then this comes up like a big noodle, like a cylinder that connects one to the other. Doing it like this also provides you a muscle mass area to be able to add muscle for your shoulders and for your chest layer. So drawing it like a little cylinder that goes around your front of your body, it helps quite a bit. And that is my preferred way to do it. I can draw good already, but I'm not trying to be a hater. If you can draw good, that's fantastic. You can draw better though. And if you wanna really understand where you stand, feel free to contact me for an assessment test. I don't charge for them. I just like making sure that people understand that, like maybe their egos get in the way of their humility. And those egos get in the way of the growth that you could possibly have, because you not thinking that you can get better sometimes stops you from getting better. All right, Sam. All right, so let's go on to, let's see, what upper part? Oh, how the arm connects general, right? So once you understand how to find that collarbone, be it with a little noodle or be it with like a cylinder or just a line, once you find that edge of that collarbone, now you can dictate how wide your arm is going to be. Your arm is going to essentially be as wide as you want it based on a little circle that's going to originate from that one point. If you want your arm to be thin, draw a thin little circle around your rib cage. If you want your arm to be big, draw a bigger circle around your rib cage. Your shoulder and everything connect right here, so they originate from this point. The reason that I choose that one point, though, is because that's where you're pivoting your arm from. So regardless of where your arm moves to, it's pivoting from that one spot. Right? Regardless of it going up, regardless of it going down, it's pivoting from that one area. So understanding where it moves and the limitations of where it moves is very important in order to pose things properly. Same thing that you need to learn, that the limitation for things like your hand has a certain mobility limitations, right? You can't move it past a certain point without it looking really weird. The same thing happens with arms, same thing happens with bodies, necks, stuff like that. You need to understand the limitations of what you can do with it so that you can actually position it properly. So understanding where the arms go is as simple as drawing your rib cage, collarbone, and then finding the two edges of your body, the two sides of your rib cage. From there, draw little circles determining how wide you want your arms to be and connect them like a little cylinder to create your chest muscles. From here, your shoulders are going to connect to your collarbone, and then everything else gets like taken out from this little tiny edge. So what happens here, right? What happens here is a layering of muscles that a lot of people just find really confusing. So let's simplify it. So we have a rib cage, we have our collarbone. That's the first step. That should be relatively easy to do now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to determine how wide our arms are going to be on our rib cage. Then we're going to start the layering of muscles. The first thing that you got to remember is that everything is going to attach roughly to your collarbone. So you need to understand how this works a little bit. Your shoulder is going to originate from here, go around, and it's going to connect back into the middle of your collarbone. This is wrapping around the front and the back of your body. And that little point right there is literally splitting your shoulder in half, and it's also splitting your body in half pretty much. Okay? So that connects to your collarbone in the front and in the back. So it kind of wraps around that point. Then from there, you have your bicep. Your bicep is going to come out from underneath your shoulder and extend out to roughly where the middle point of your rib cage is. This is where your bicep's going to extend to. Your bicep and your tricep are divided by your shoulder. So your shoulder essentially divides your bicep and your tricep into two parts. Okay, so that's what's happening with that part. Then your pectoral muscle comes from underneath your shoulder and it connects to the middle part of your chest. That is your upper pectoral muscle. The upper pectoral muscle comes from underneath the shoulder and connects to the middle point of your rib cage. Then you have your lower pectoral muscle that gives that boxy roundness to it. After you have that lower pectoral muscle that goes underneath your arm, then you have the muscles around your back that wrap around your rib cage and connect underneath your pectoral muscles. Right? These go around the back, and then they give you that width that you need for that upper body. Now, for women, it's a little bit different. You want not to create such bulkiness when it comes down to drawing, like, I don't know, say a pinup. So you want to keep it a little bit simpler. You don't want extremes when it comes down to line work. So your shoulders and your arms in general will be a little bit less muscular. Your pectoral muscles are going to be the same though. Your shoulders are going to connect here, and your pectorals are going to come from underneath your armpits, but they have a slightly different texture, right? They have, instead of being boxy, they have more of a roundness to them. Doesn't have to be that big either. Just have to make sure that you draw some element in there that has volume. And then from there, the natural angles that happen with your hip bones being a little bit wider than your rib cage, you end up with an hourglass shape. And that is how you approach the muscles from the female side. It's the same thing, just instead of having it be boxy, you give breasts. I hope he does, because ami. What's ami? Aim. Same, because same what? What are you guys asking? Maybe you post this on your YouTube if you can. This is the part where I have trouble with. Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this one and the hip bone one will be on YouTube. So when it comes down to drawing bodies, it's really easy. Just draw a little tube to come up with your little collarbone, and then you have access to the positioning of your arms. And you also know that your neck is supposed to be right there. So it becomes a little bit easier to think about the rib cage. because you know where both sides are going to be. You can play around with the shape of this stuff, come up with some back views, some front views. So it's going to be a little bit easier for you to map out your characters by doing this. You can even start with your arms, since you already know where things are supposed to go. Life drawing will be incredibly easy now. Right? Because all you got to do is really find two cylinders. You got to find your shoulder cylinders and you got to find your hip bone cylinders. And once you find those, you already know where things are supposed to come out from. So it becomes a lot easier to be able to pose your characters. You guys will really thank me when it comes down to when you are drawing any sort of posing. It's going to become a lot easier for you guys. Hello, I wanted to ask you where you recommend starting with human body drawings. Head and body. Okay, so when it comes down to learning the human anatomy, right, in general, just human anatomy in general. Let me see if I have space in other pages so that I can walk you guys through this shit. So human anatomy needs to be learned in a specific order to get the maximum from it. I'll just explain it in the post-it. That's me, by the way.